if you smell what The Rock is cooking.
Acknowledge me.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
We are bad to the bone. Get it? Bad to the bone.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
I'll fight anybody. Who do you want? Just let me fight him.
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross.
Mega power, yeah.
We got it for you.
We are the best of the best.
Woo! Wheeling dealing. Smart marks.
And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Talk 'em Into the Building. We're still here in Wrestlemania season. Hopefully you guys caught our last episode. This is my favorite part of the year. And, you know, especially as a wrestling fan growing up in the WrestleMania era, I can't believe we're on WrestleMania 40 years. Man, that's
wild.
I don't feel old until I start hearing things like that, man. But so my WrestleMania season so far, I've enjoyed it. I wish I was going to Philadelphia, just had some issues this year and can't go. So, but Adrian, how's your Mania season going so far?
Excited, man. I'm excited. It's always like you. This is my favorite time of the year. I'm kind of conflicted on some of the matches, but those main events look like they're going to be money, man. I can't wait to see them. Hopefully the right person wins. Oh my God. Hopefully. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, man, it's looking like it's going to be another great show. They always deliver on those.
Oh, for sure.
At least my opinion. I think I'm a little biased just being there. Of course, you're going to always, it was awesome. It was perfect. But even though once you watch it on TV, you're like, it was. But nah, they always deliver for me, man. It's the perfect time of the year. And salute to any listeners. If you're a WrestleMania fan, if this is your first time checking us out, man, we really appreciate you giving us an opportunity because it's going to be some fun conversations, fun and genuine.
For sure.
That's always key.
Yeah, Adelaide, how's your Mania season going?
My Mania season is going well. I think I'm very spoiled because, you know, living in Los Angeles, I'm just drowning in wrestling some weeks where it's just picking and choosing, and it's really finding the time. So I think one of the resolutions I know that we made was to go to more indie shows, right? And more go travel. And a lot of the times I've joked with Adrian, but I've told you too, Greg, where like where I live, I can literally hear wrestling shows sometimes. I can hear the roar of a crowd and the, you know, the pang of a wrestling ring. So, you know, I'm to put it this time of year, it feels like I'm swimming in champagne, to be quite honest. So it is really cool. And just to see just the fever pitch that wrestling has become in the mainstream makes it that much better. But yeah, rainy season, you know, there's not a dull moment. Now having 2 nights, it's, you know, you really got to bank the whole weekend. You got to block that out and make something of it.
You know what's wild is having those 2 nights. I thought, man, should they have 2 nights? Yeah, they should.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not burned out. I know Adrian and I were in New York when they had that marathon. I swear we were there for 12 hours. I don't know how long we were there.
Like it.
Oh man, it was such a long night, and by the time they got to the main event, everybody was so worn out. And then we were so lucky to be on the bus because as soon as that show was over, we had taken the WrestleCon bus. We got on that bus, and it was a downpour.
Oh,
so
boy.
But yeah, that day was so long, and you know, you get it, right? You have so much talent and so many people, but I'm glad they moved it to 2 nights.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, having experienced that 2 nights last year was just a godsend because like I wasn't exhausted. Like I still went back. I mean, obviously it was in LA, so it was my backyard, but went back, slept, rested, you know, and was back at it the next day. And there was still events going on, like tons of shows, even in those days, you know, beyond the week. So, yeah, I'm grateful for it. Hey, if it's gonna be more cool wrestling and more spectacle, why not?
For sure, sure. So definitely want to thank the listeners again for joining us. If you didn't catch last episode, we went to WrestleMania 1. Each of us brought a promo from WrestleMania 1 because we want to celebrate this season. So now This week, we're going to do something a little bit different. It's WrestleMania 40. 40 years. So we said, you know what? We're each going to take one of the decades. So we got WrestleMania 10, WrestleMania 20, and WrestleMania 30. So each one of us took one of those for whatever our own pick of reasons. So I get the pleasure of bringing to you guys WrestleMania 10. This one is a special one to me for a couple of different reasons. One, I was there. So my first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 9, which was in Vegas. One that most people hate. I love it because at the end of the day, I was there. So it's different when you're there. I don't care what anybody says. People got mad about Hogan beating Brett. Oh, everybody's mad. No, they weren't. They all lost their minds. Now, afterwards, maybe we were all like, that didn't make sense. But at the moment, we all lost our minds. Fast forward to WrestleMania 10. It's the first Mania without Hogan. It's Madison Square Garden.
that's
My
true.
first trip to New York. My first trip to Madison Square Garden. My first trip to Times Square. That was not the Times Square that you see today by any stretch of the imagination. There was I had been to Blockbuster Video before. I had been to the movie stop. I had not been to these types of video stores before. That's all I'm going to say about that. Those video stores are no longer in Times Square. It
No
was
Giuliani.
snowing. I did a whole package with WWE at the time. I would never forget seeing the how much those tickets cost because we did a package, right? And we picked up our tickets. We had a little, everything was paper. I looked at it and I looked at my buddy Andy. I was like, these tickets are $300 a piece. He was like, what? I was like, they were $300 a piece. We were on the floor. So if you ever go back and you watch WrestleMania 10 and you see Crush and you see Macho Man, they fight through the crowd and they go back and you see a guy happens to be in a shirt just like what Lex Luger wore, half American. That's me. They fought right next to me.
Wow,
They
that's
went right by me.
dope.
Yeah, so they were, and I was like leaning over, watching where they were at, because you could see where they were fighting in the hallway back there.
I'm
But
gonna
they came
try to
right down
pan
my
it.
aisle. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
try to pan it so the audience can see you.
But yeah, it
totally.
was cool. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. It was a blur. I'm not gonna lie. It was a blur. Um, my guy did not win at the end of the night. I will say that. I know Adrian celebrating over there. He's a huge hit man. I was Lex Luger all the way. One, you got to go back to where I grew up here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Always a pseudo Luger
Yeah.
fan. Always liked Luger. I was pulling for Luger when he went to WWE. I was like, okay, cool. And so he was my guy. And it took me a long time, to be honest, it took me a long time to look at Bret Hart as a main eventer. I don't know if it was a stigma around him being in the tag team or what. I just didn't understand it. I understand it more now as an adult, but back then, not so much. And of course, there's one match that everybody remembers. Yes, Owen and Brett was great, but there's one match that everybody remembers that changed the industry that day, and that's Razor Ramon versus HBK, Shawn
Yeah.
Michaels
Hmm.
in a ladder match. Now, I'm just going to give you all some trivia. I'm going to go to you, Adelie. Do you know why they had to have a ladder match?
Huh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I assuming it was like the ultimate stipulation at the time, right? I'm like, they've exhausted everything at that point. Is that it?
I think I could be mistaken, but I
Uh-huh.
want to say was Sean the original champion and Razor the interim because Sean had to relinquish it.
Correct. So Shawn had to
Okay.
relinquish it at
Yeah.
some
Okay.
point. Razor won the belt. So then Shawn came back. I don't know if he lost his smile one time or whatever, but he he did a Shawn, and he came back and he had the title. So now there were two belts. So they're fighting to say
Okay.
who is the real Intercontinental Champion.
Right.
And so they had to hang those belts above, and they had to grab both belts and bring them down. Now keep in mind,
Let's
I don't think this was the first ever ladder match, but it's the first one on any
see.
mainstream. WCW had never
Absolutely.
had one.
Yep.
WWE had never had one, and allegedly, it was Bret Hart's idea. That he's the one that pitched it.
Figures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it would be.
So I believe I think they had him in Stampede before, something to that effect. So the promos leading up to this, and before we get into the actual ones, were all about who's the real champion. I'm the real champion. No, I'm the real champion type of thing. And of course, this is all about the Click at the same time. So many of the other backstories that many of us didn't know about, right? Because I didn't read the Observer, and it wasn't like there's internet. So you had, Shawn Michaels, you had Diesel, Kevin Nash in his corner. You had Razor on the other side, all very tight, right? And then I'll tell y'all some more trivial stuff after it. This is just one of my favorite matches of all time. When you look at Mania matches and you go through all the history, 39 years of it, and people say, what stands out? What are the greatest matches? People have their own perceptions, right? They all have, Steamboat and Savage. They've got Benoit. They've got a Taker and Shawn. They've got Owen and Brett. They've got all these different ones. But if you really think about it, this is at the top. This changed the industry. Even though they talk about the triple threat later on, with the Hardys and the Dudleys and Edge and Christian, without this match, that one doesn't happen.
Yep.
Adrian and I were sitting in Orlando a few years ago when the Hardys came out for that ladder match, and the loudest I've ever heard a crowd in my entire life when they came out.
Yep.
Any sporting event, anything. I've never heard a pop like that. That match doesn't happen without this one. This one laid the blueprint for every other ladder match. We're going to talk about the hotline first.
You can play WrestleMania trivia. You can also talk to a mystery guest.
Sweet Stan Lane
yet, but each and every day a new
for the Midnight Express
will tell about his favorite memory of a past WrestleMania. Nice. It's going to be unbelievable. The lines are open now, the WrestleMania hotline, so pick up your phone and call. Now let's talk about one of the matches signed to WrestleMania 10. Ladder rules. The bad guy, the undisputed Intercontinental Champion Razor Ramon, will face Shawn Michaels. Earlier, I talked to Shawn and asked him, if you are victorious at WrestleMania 10, what do you plan to do with Razor's belt?
Oh, well, let me get this right. If Shawn Michaels is victorious, or when he's victorious at WrestleMania 10, it's still Razor's belt, huh? You know something? You guys and everybody in the World Wrestling Federation cannot stand the fact that the Heartbreak Kid is and always will be the undisputed World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion. You can call it Razor's belt. You can call it anybody's belt. But I know, Big Daddy Cool knows, Razor Ramon knows, and all the fans of the World Wrestling Federation know that there is only one man that is the undisputed World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion, and it is the Heartbreak Kid himself, Shawn Michaels. Like it.
Boy, is that Shawn Michaels confident or what? I talked to the bad guy earlier, too, and I asked him, if you win this ladder match, what do you intend to do with Shawn's belt?
First of all, Chico, when I win this ladder match at WrestleMania 10 in front of the whole world, what am I going to do with Shawn's belt? I don't know. Maybe I'll throw it out into the crowd, huh? MSG, they go crazy. Maybe I melt it down, some new chains. Maybe I wear one on the front, one on the back. Maybe I sell it, buy me a new Cadillac. One thing is for sure.
Nice.
There can only be one champ, and it's me.
Don't forget, fans, 1 week away. That's right, next Sunday, March the 20th, WrestleMania 10.
I want to buy a ticket to that show.
Okay, Adelaide, I'm gonna come to you first. Overall impressions of that.
It's just the parallels are there. Just the fact that they say when I'm the champion, when I win, and they almost like say the same exact line, but just two drastically different personas, right? Whereas, Razor's still leaning into the character. He's still leaning into all the tropes of, the chains and the Cadillac and, this is, he's leaning into the voice. And Shawn is a bit, he's bridging that gap of Shawn Michaels is me. I'm not portraying a character, but they're both uniquely well polished and well done, right? Razor truly knows his character. He knows exactly what he wants to say. He's drawing out, I'm going to do this to the belt. I'm going to do this to the belt. I'm going to do this to the belt. But no matter what, it's because I'm going to keep the belt, right? I'm going to be the unified champion, so to speak. Shawn's is all charisma. It's all confidence. It's all ego driven, down to the fact that he even says, "Wow, what a confident man here, right? What a confident Shawn Michaels." But it fits their characters. It fits their persona so perfectly that I want to see these egos clash. I want to see what happens ultimately between both of them. So, kudos to both of them for, at this point in their career, obviously having the confidence, but for them to say, point blank, here's the camera, outside of Diesel being there as, the heavy, there's not much else to it. It's really just the performer giving that promo, right? There's no glitz and glamour behind that. So I think it's pretty impressive, at least to me.
Definitely, man. Definitely. I loved it. You could tell with Shawn's character, he feels slighted. He feels disrespected. He's motivated because what the hell do you mean his belt? That's always been my belt. I don't care if I was hurt. Everyone knows I'm the best. I'm Shawn Michaels. I'm the IC champion. He's just been a placeholder. It's always been my belt. And it's that, like you said, it's that level of arrogance. That's what we loved about that character of Shawn, that edge, that sense of what the hell do you mean that you're the best or you're the champ? I'm the best wrestler in this company. I don't have to have the number one title for everyone to know and understand and recognize that I'm the main event. Like that's the Shawn Michaels, love him or hate him. And boy, as a child, I hated the guy, but he did the job. He did the job. And shout out to Diesel because he was just doing it. He was just Big Daddy Cool. When he mentioned Big Daddy Cool, what did he do? He went like that's cool, man. That's what it was, man. So yeah, like you said, very simple, to the point. You got a chance to see both the difference in both characters, the contrast, and I was sold. Like you said, I was already sold, but I was definitely sold by that match for sure. I remember looking forward to it.
Oh, for sure. I remember hating Shawn Michaels at that time. I loved Razor from the moment he showed up, even as a heel. I loved Razor, and I don't know what it was. It was just something about him that connected with me. Like I remember him as Diamond Stud, and I'll be honest. If you go back and look at old Scott Hall stuff from AWA, I had no clue that's who that was. If you go back and look at old Scott Hall stuff, I'm like, that's the same person. Like, really? I remember when he was called Magnum Scott Hall. Like, he tried to be like Magnum TA at one point. And I was like, I had no clue that the Diamond Stud was him. Like, I knew Diamond Stud was Razor, but totally talked me into that building. They had me hook, line, and sinker on that. And I was like, all about Razor. And I had an idea of what he should do with that Shawn Michaels belt. Like he talked about, I should throw it into the crowd, and he talked about, I thought he should give it to me. I mean, that was my thought. I mean, my legit thought was he should give this to me because earlier that morning, I was like, dude, why can't you just hand that to me? And I mean, I don't understand why he couldn't. It was just, a little bit upsetting to me because I do have something I want to show to you guys if it will come up. Earlier that morning, I was with Razor Ramon at breakfast. So, yes, that is his belt. And I point blank asked him, hey, if you do win or when you win, can you give me Shawn's belt? And he said, I don't know, Chico. And no lie, that's exactly what he said to me. So that is me with Razor at breakfast WrestleMania morning.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that stash.
Yes,
Dang.
sir.
What hat are you wearing? Is that a Panthers
Is
hat?
that Panthers?
Yes,
Yeah.
Carolina Panthers hat. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow, clean. That's straight out of the '90s.
Yes, sir. 100%. But
That's awesome.
yeah, so one of the cool things about that day is that because we bought that package, we had brunch with the superstars. They didn't eat nothing with us, but we got to go in there and meet them. So I got to meet Razor, Men on a Mission, Smoking Guns, and Doink.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But the
That's
fact
cool.
that I didn't care,
Yeah.
I think that might be the only picture I took. I didn't even care. I just wanted to see. I was like, Razor, oh, I'm good. And if you really look at that picture, I had a toothpick in my mouth too. So
No way.
yes, sir.
Nice,
Yes, sir.
man.
But the fact I was like, he
Oh,
had the belt. It was funny because we're all. It wasn't a lot of us, and we could only go around. And he had the belt just sitting there, and I said, "Well, can I hold the belt?" He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah, Chico." And I was like, he just handed it to me. I just threw it on my shoulder. All right, cool. So but yeah, I legit did ask him for Sean's belt. He didn't come through.
Nice.
But
Nice.
but I mean,
That's awesome. Yeah.
but watching those promos, man, it just shows you the character that they had, the character development. I mean, looking at Sean then and how he became something different. Looking at how Razor was and how he went when he became, Scott Hall. He had to adjust some of that, right, because they got sued.
yeah.
But how good they were in their characters and how much they believed in their characters.
Yeah.
But they still had that old school to them, especially Sean. He still threw out that WrestleMania date. He still threw out those little pieces that when you go back and watch some of these old things, they were talking them into the building because they had to remind you what time, when, and all of that. But I want to unpack something else. How awful was Stan Lane in this role?
Yeah.
Oh man, he was
it
just the
wasn't
most
near as
generic
clean.
guy, like voiceover basically. Could have been a voiceover, really.
The beginnings of Michael Cole.
Yeah,
Man,
the very bland, like
generic.
it just Mean Gene spoiled us all, man. Just with how he was the perfect bridge. Hell, Lance Archer, he spoiled us with how much of a bridge he was. Like, it's just one of those things where, especially as a modern day fan, we don't quite get that from that commentary team for
No.
any of these companies. WWE, AEW, TNA tries, but it's really lacking that true bridge. It's that true bridge of these two distinct characters, these two completely different characters, and you have this person just bridging the two and really telling the story and helping a person highlight something or emphasize something. I don't see that as much, or I don't see it done as flawlessly as those guys that I mentioned before.
No, just the addendum to that. It's like I wonder how much people are walking on eggshells, and they're just this is the expectation, right? It's I'm gonna be secondary, which I mean, not that they weren't a primary kind of source or like Adrian said, a bridge, but they were there to facilitate the promo, right? They were there not as background dressing as like I'm just here effectively as a mic stand to get you to your next bit. It's like no, they're a living part of the promo, and that art is gone. We don't really see that backstage interviewer that way.
For sure. And I think the thing that got me about that is I'm watching Stan Lane and I'm like, this dude has so much charisma. Like Sweet Stan with the Midnight Express, being with the Fabulous Ones before, dude could cut a promo. Granted, you had Jim Cornette, who you didn't have to cut a promo, but when they gave Stan the mic, he could cut a promo. And I'm like watching this going, where is any of this charisma? Like, where's anything? It reminded me of Doc Hendricks when Michael Hayes first went up there, but this was worse. It was
with the
like,
haircut, the
oh
awful
man,
haircut.
but this was worse. And I was just like, and that's part of the reason I picked this one, because there was another one that was very similar that had Todd Pettengill, and he had a different energy and charisma and all of that. But I saw this one, but no, I got to take Stan because I wanted to break down the Stan piece too, because I think this is where you overthink it. You overthink what you should be. Razor knew who he was. Diesel knew who he was because in that promo, you mentioned it. He was like, but he's got his hand, he's doing his glove. Diesel has a very distinct part of that promo visually for Shawn. As Shawn's talking, you kind of have that feeling like, oh man, what's this big dude behind him? He's his muscle, right? And there's all these other things that go along with that promo, not just talking. And then you get to stand, and I believe you're 100% right. They're not making that connection, but he was awful. Like, I don't even need you to make the connection so much. Just give me some genuine energy or something. And it was like, oh, this is bad. And I think and like I said, it's even worse because I grew up watching him too. And you're like, oh my gosh, like come on,
you know what
man.
he's capable of, right?
Yeah,
and it's just he's holding back. He's playing the newscaster role. I mean, down to the set, right? Like that's literally what he's getting into.
Yeah, exactly. But I just love these promos. I love these old school promos. They believed in who they were, and you could feel it. I mean, even Razor, with his whole Puerto Rican type flair to him and everything. How he tied in what are you going to do with the belt? How he tied in, I don't know. I might melt it down and make a chain. I might, and it was just like, just little stuff like that. It's like, it was entertaining, but it was like cool in the contrast where Shawn was more like, what do you mean Razor's belt? And Razor was like, I'm going to win. I don't know what I'm going to do with that belt. It was just kind of like, there's two differences there. It's like Shawn felt disrespected, whereas Razor was like confident. And I felt like Shawn almost came across as a false confidence, disrespected false confidence, whereas Razor comes back. And I think that's a great balance of how we look at these characters and how they create that emotion within us.
That's true.
Yeah. I have a question that has nothing to do with the promo. Sorry, sorry, Adrian. And sorry, Greg. For Greg, I've always heard Razor in his prime was this giant boulder of a man. What was he like in person? Because I want to know what high prime Razor Ramon was like when you had at that meet and greet.
I mean, he was in character 100%. So
that's so cool.
He was just so chill. I would say all of them were very cool. Like, but they were in character. Don't get it twisted. They did not let their guard down. But they weren't over the top at all. Like he called me Chico or whatever, but he was just laid back. He was just chilling, and it was early in the morning, dude. It was not like 10. It was like 7. It was like
he just got in.
Just imagine what he was getting into the night
before. Exactly. Who knows what was going on that night? But yeah, I don't remember. He didn't look hungover or any of that kind of stuff. He was extremely nice. Just real chill. Like I said, hey, can I pick up the belt? Of course, Chico. And then he just handed it to me. Like he didn't wait for me to do it. He just grabbed it. Cool. I just threw it on my shoulder. And he just looked. That's why he did a little point, and it was just real cool. Men on a Mission, probably the most standoffish. They were cool, but they were and Smoking Guns were happy to be there. So
sounds about right.
That's kind of how they came across. They were just happy to be there. Men on a Mission was still cool. They were just kind of like probably outside of Razor, the biggest stars that were sitting there. The most over, and nobody cared about Doink. I swear it was Doink. I could be wrong, but I think it was Doink was there. But I don't have any pictures of anything else. But think about it. We didn't have phones. It was everything had to be developed. So. I just don't remember. I don't have any other pictures. I'm sure I might have some somewhere, but it was only Razor that I was trying to find.
That's a dope experience, man. I met Scott in Dallas, WrestleMania 32.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice guy. One of the nicest human beings I ever met. I even invited him to my restaurant at the time, and they actually showed up. So
nice.
That was always fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Because it was close by where DDP was, and that was
at
the same time. So, yeah. So shout out to them, man. Rest in peace. I mean, great.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest characters. One of the greatest wrestling characters of all time.
Oh, for
Best
sure.
gimmick.
For sure.
Such an influence.
One other thing about that weekend, that was one of the first weekends that it was the first that they ever did a fan fest. So it was not called Access. It was called, I think it may have just been called Fan Fest. And so it was the beginnings of Access. Lex Luger was, it was like standing in line. So you kind of got an autograph, went to another autograph, went to another autograph. And I still have the program with all the autographs on it.
Nice.
Jeff Jarrett was heel Jeff Jarrett. 100%. Luger was a little bit not as nice as I thought he would have been. I think he was just like aggravated to be there. Like you hear the stories of what Luger was, right? I mean, it was what it was. I remember those two. I don't remember who else I met during that time. I mean, I have a bunch of autographs on there. I think maybe Tatanka and some others. But
nice.
I know I have pictures. I tried my best to get to J.J. Dillon. He was walking around to get a Four Horseman thing, and he disappeared on me. Because at the time, he was working there, and he was just walking around. And then I remember they had the set of the funeral parlor was there. The set of that.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't huge, right? You had nothing like what Access became later on. But it was pretty cool.
It's the beginnings,
that is cool to
man.
hear that.
Yeah.
The very beginnings.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just
they
another
still do the sets.
just another example of the innovative nature of that whole event.
The foresight.
Yeah, man.
Because having gone the year before to Vegas, they did a meet and greet inside Caesar's Palace, inside the mall area. If you've ever been there, it's kind of like a mall. And I went to it, but I couldn't get to nobody. I saw Undertaker come out, and I saw the Steiners. Then I saw Scott Steiner at a club that night. And let's just say he was having a lot of fun. Like, I saw a whole different side of what I thought I was going to see. My buddy's like, the guy I went with it, man, did you go talk to him? I'm like, it was not conducive to me speaking to that man. Not at all. So, no. But it's so different. I mean, it's just very different because it was not something like you're in Vegas. And I don't think 90% of the people in Vegas had any idea that WrestleMania was happening. So, yeah, it was very different than what you go see today.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is hilarious now that it's rumored that Vegas might hold a Mania at some point, right? I mean, that's I don't know.
It only makes sense.
Yeah, that new stadium. Why we can't get that new stadium feel here in Atlanta? That was part of the pitch to the new stadium was WrestleMania. We still haven't gotten it.
I'll take a national championship this year
for sure.
So go Dogs. Yeah, man. Before we move on, man, I did say Lance Archer, or I meant Lance Russell.
Yes.
So before YouTube comments drag me, yes, Lance Russell, legend. Rest in peace to him.
Murder Hawk is cool though. I love Lance.
Yeah. I like that guy.
Yeah, Lance Russell was underrated for sure. We got to do an episode on him one day.
Definitely, man.
Definitely.
If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, look us up on socials at Suplex Dinner Club. And be sure to check out our other projects. We talk college football on Dogs versus All Y'all. That's a weekly college football podcast where we don't just talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We talk about all things college football. The Life and Times pod, which is short for the Life and Times of a Restaurant Lifer podcast, where I have some chill conversations with some cool and interesting people that I've met in my years in the hospitality industry. And of course, check out Talk 'em in the Building. That's a pro wrestling podcast where we solely focus on the promo. We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate on the promo. It's a fun project, and if you're a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you're into TV and movie reviews, check out Four Corners Cinema with Ari and Adrian, a podcast where two lifelong pro wrestling fans review film and other forms of media that just so happen to have some of our favorite pro wrestlers. The Suplex Dinner Club family is growing, and I would love for you to be a part of it.
But Adrian, I'm going to pass it over to you. I think you got WrestleMania 20, correct?
Yes, man. WrestleMania 20, in my humble opinion, the greatest WrestleMania of all time. Almost perfect, in my opinion, where it all begins again. And the reason's very simple, gentlemen. It's at Madison Square Garden. That's the mecca of any kind of combat sports, professional sports arena. If you've ever been there, it's a classic venue. Still kind of looks the same, man. I know they've done some renovations, but it's that classic stadium feel there. On that card, what's the opener? Well, you have a young upstart John Cena facing Big Show for that United States Championship. You got a couple classics. I'm not going to go over that entire card, but I will point out Christian versus Chris Jericho. That was a fun match with a, unique ending. I will say that. You got the Rock and Sock connection. One of our personal favorite tag teams showing up and facing Evolution, because during that time, that was Triple H's reign of terror it was going into. And you had Evolution, Randy Orton, Bautista, and Ric Flair. Like, you got stars. You got guys that you got Bautista and Randy Orton, who, if I'm not mistaken, this would have been their first WrestleMania. You got guys, you look at them now, those are first ballot Hall of Famers, some of the greatest ever to set foot in the ring. Also, you got a classic match of you got my guy Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, and probably one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. I love that 100%. Finish. Yeah, man, you can rewatch it over and over again. And unfortunately, the main event, where a lot of people won't be able to talk about it because of how they feel about Chris Benoit, but you had that triple threat: Chris Benoit, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. Terrific finish. That lasting image of Eddie coming out to celebrate this championship, to celebrate with one of his friends, two of the guys that were always counted out in that company due to maybe their size, maybe the fact that their promo isn't as nearly as engaging of all these other superstars. They're ending the show. And it was such a terrific moment and image. And it's so unfortunate that due to things that happen, they'll never talk about it. And it's such a shame, and it's heartbreaking. And of course, Brock and Goldberg, which should have been so awesome. And I'm glad that they fixed it in Orlando. Yeah. Because even though I know people crapped on it, that was an awesome match in Orlando.
It was.
It was like Godzilla, King Kong facing each other. It was
exactly what it should have been.
Exactly. So I'm glad they ran it back, but the first one, it stunk, and we all make fun of it. But I say all that to say WrestleMania 20, in my humble opinion, was the greatest WrestleMania of all time. It was my personal favorite, even though 10 is probably second, just because I'm a Bret Hart mark. The promo that I brought you guys, this segment, deals with a match that I didn't mention. The Battle of Brothers. Undertaker versus Kane. Classic matchup. Character changes in both, which are very unique compared to what we know of both of them.
I came here tonight to give a eulogy for my brother, the Undertaker. The man that I buried alive at Survivor Series. My brother and I used to share a common bond. We were monsters, but my brother committed the most unpardonable of all sins. He betrayed himself. He became one of you. This man was not my brother. This man was not a monster. My brother was nothing but a fraud. I buried him alive. Rest in peace. I buried the Undertaker alive. For weeks, you've been sending me signs of your return. It's gonna take more than this to intimidate me. The Undertaker is dead! 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 At WrestleMania, there's not going to be any resurrection. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust. It's over, dead man. I am not afraid of you!
Chef's kiss.
So much to unpack.
Let's get into it.
Still my favorite iteration, my favorite character work from Kane, Glenn Jacobs. To take a character, to take that kind of what ended up being a goofy change to his character, right? The unmasking and the burn scars. They were trying to play up that backstory, but to almost become this intellectual serial killer of sorts, right? And to be pitted against his own brother, then when we kind of give credence to that whole lineage, all those stories we've, the brothers of destruction and all these stories, all this background, and it comes back into the fold to only introduce the most vicious form of the Undertaker, right? It's not American Badass Taker. It's not early 90s kind of finding his way Taker. It is Ministry Taker. It is a fully formed kind of most evil version of him. And here he is, right? Here he is in the fold. And for me, what strikes me the most is this ultimate frustration from Kane, where you hear the pain in his voice, right? It's almost like he's acting like it's a movie or something, because he's playing into this idea that you're supposed to be dead, when as an audience we're like, he's a dead man. He's gonna come back. He's literally, he is an undead individual, and for you to believe that, it's almost like you're foolish to believe that he's not gonna come back. And it's almost like the first time you truly hear fear in Kane's voice, because up until that, he is the big red monster. He is this kind of new, character that you still see the hairline where he's shaving half the hair, where the burn scars were going to be. He's not quite, fully shaved, but to hear that fear and that sense of opposition is so unique, and the way that they played into it and treated it with gravitas, right? It wasn't treated like a joke. It wasn't treated like an afterthought, like, Kane is crazy, or Kane, this goofy character. It's treated with respect. And I think that's when these angles, as ridiculous as it is for someone to resurrect someone, and there's parallels to, some Christian, pieces there, a resurrection of sorts, an evil resurrection, a dark resurrection, and you buy it hook, line, and sinker, because the streak is still there. There's still all these pieces where Taker, at this point, the streak is named, but it's not what it's going to become quite yet.
Right.
It's not there. It's not lore completely yet, but this is a building block towards that lore. And that's what struck me most of it, because I really wanted to take, and I really liked the character and what he become, and who's the only legitimate threat to Kane in this iteration is the Undertaker.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Greg, did that promo talk you in the building that year?
Oh, 100%. Because that was the change that we all wanted.
Yep.
And it was a storyline that took us. We have to go back. It go back to the dead man becomes the American badass, and we come back to the dead man. But when we get back to the dead man, he wrestles like the American Badass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was something, if you go back and watch that whole transition before American Badass, he was like methodical. He's very matter of fact of how he wrestled. It was good. It was a character. Similar to what we talked about, when we look at attractions, right? They come in, they go, he changed the way he wrestled as American Badass. Very much
Definitely.
so. And so when he came back as the dead man, he took what he had before as the original dead man, brought in all the stuff he had as American Badass, and now he was better than ever. Arguably, he was the best he's ever been past that. And it took Kane in this storyline to bring that out.
Exactly.
And he had to die and come back better.
Yep.
But yes, that taught me into the building because it's like, one, it was well produced. Two, Kane is as great as he is still underrated.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My opinion, and I don't think there's any debate, and I would debate anybody about it. These are the two greatest characters in the history of pro wrestling. Across the board.
Man.
That's fair.
They both were able to do multiple characters. They could do monsters. They could do, flip into American Badass. Kane, I could argue Kane is the greatest character of when you look at longevity and diversity of character, of where he went throughout that entire career. And this right here, that, like you said, that menacing serial killer type of Kane was legit. You believed it. And it was just like, what other storylines can you truly suspend this disbelief like these two? You think about all the crazy stuff we've seen throughout all of our lives. I could sit here and I would watch 90% of their stuff and I can suspend my disbelief.
Absolutely.
And be sucked in.
Very true.
So I love this one. This is a great one.
Yeah, man. It was just one of those feelings going into that match. I really did think Kane was going to beat him because going into that, Kane was literally a leveled up monster. Kane's always been a monster.
Right.
But like you said, once he removed the mask, he sounds more intelligent. Like he sounds like he knows what the hell's going on. In fact, planning attacks, and it's just a whole different added element of this guy's always been dangerous just due to size and aggressiveness. Now
it's deliberate. It's not reactionary.
Now he's deliberate.
Anymore.
Exactly. So it was terrific. And also notice during that promo package, you didn't see Kane and Undertaker in the same ring after he buried him.
No.
Because per storyline, you're supposed to be dead. We're still waiting to see what Undertaker really is going to come out and face Kane this evening. It's that anticipation. True, they're showing little cuts of Undertaker, potentially this character that's about to come out. But for all we know, it could have been a whole different take of American Badass, a spooky version of it, or a whole different character. It could have been anything. We didn't truly know. Right. We knew, but we didn't know. And that was part of the beauty of it. And props to, this is when WWE was in their pocket on production. Because one thing about WWE, love them or hate them, their pre-match setups and promo segments, second to none. You don't even have to have watched WWE to know what this story is. And that's the beauty of it. And, I don't want to make it a WWE versus AEW thing, but AEW lacks in that department. And I just wish they could just crank it up just a notch. Yeah. Just be a little bit more inspired to do something like that. And I guarantee more people will be locked in. And they do it sometimes, and they knock it out the park sometimes to give them credit. But it's that level of consistency. We all know going into WrestleMania that we're gonna get those. We're gonna get that. We're gonna get that. My Way. Stone
that
Cold
Austin My Way. Yeah, he took it out.
Yeah. We're gonna get that. We're gonna get that kind of story. We're gonna get that. Rock Cena. First time. We're gonna get that massive.
Oh yeah.
That it's just a good 2-minute summary of what happened, but you're getting the best parts, the best moments, the best reactions, and it's just consolidated to the point where when that's done and those entrances hit, you're locked in, you know what the hell's happened, and you're even more so anticipating what's gonna happen. So bravo to them for those kind of things.
No, for sure. I think the other thing about this storyline, because they did bury Taker, the entire storyline was carried by Kane. The entire lead up, there was nobody to play off of. There was no, I'm gonna say this and Taker comes back. It's no back and forth. It's Kane. And to your point, Adrian, you didn't know what you were gonna find. You didn't. We all assumed Dead Man's coming back. Dead Man's coming back. We assumed it. We didn't know.
Right.
And it was kind of like that whole thing. But that's how good Kane is, or was, especially at that time. He could carry that, a main event level storyline by himself. That's why I say he's so underrated, because he took that alone.
And that's a very good point, because I will say, you know what WrestleMania match down the line in the future attempted to do that, but it was somewhat suspect, was Bray Wyatt, rest in peace, and Taker.
Yep.
They had their matchup, and Bray was the only person we heard of.
Yep.
Bray was the only one cutting promos. True, people, of course, we know who Undertaker is, and we will see highlights of Undertaker, but Taker didn't cut any promos. He didn't come out, anything like that. It was driven 100% by Bray. And even though it kind of fell flat, it wasn't the same level, but I could tell that there were similarities between those two.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, this was awesome. Great pick, man. Great pick.
I love it. I'm a mark over that Kane RSO.
Hell yeah.
I know we like to reminisce about these things. And I always have a story about everything. So I do have a story about 20, which is hilarious to me. I was supposed to be at 20 as well. However, a little thing happened, i.e. my son was due in March of 2004.
Nice.
So my wife at the time was like, so you still going to Mania? I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's probably long-term plans in my successful marriage. I don't think that's a good idea. So I cancel all plans, right? So she's like, no, you probably still go. You'd be fine. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. So like she's due in March, and this is March. Now WrestleMania 20 happened to be March 14th, 2004. I know this because she went into labor during the main event.
Wow.
She started having contractions. She didn't tell me, but she started having contractions during the main event. I think Randy was at the house, and we were watching it. She didn't tell me until afterwards. She was like, I think I'm having contractions. I'm like, nah, you good. But she was having contractions. We ended up going to the hospital later on that night, and he's born March 15th. That's why I know it was on March 14th that this thing took place.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
That's
wow. That's awesome.
I was like, yeah, so I got a crazy story about everything, man. But yeah, it's like, I would just never forget that, because it was also weird to me that it was so much earlier, because normally it's like early April, late March.
True.
But yeah,
that's my favorite WrestleMania, man. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, wow, what a memory to have that Mania for sure. Unforgettable.
Could you imagine if I had gone?
Kids.
I'd have never lived that down.
No. By multiple people.
as much as we're hardcore wrestling fans, that's no.
No.
Yeah.
Ain't no
I
way.
think I'd have lost that match. I leave. We're gonna pass it over to you. So you got WrestleMania 30, sir.
I do have WrestleMania 30, and with that brings a lot of backstory because as we're coming around to WrestleMania 40, and it's a nice round number. It's hard to believe for me that 10 years ago we're looking at a really formative WrestleMania, pretty much a fork in the road, so to speak, for what the business would be. And we talk about a Shawn Michaels, and we talk about a Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero in the previous manias that we presented, and they are not huge people. They are on the smaller side, and that was always a contention that it was always the big bodies, the big guys. And this mania is indicative of that, in the same way that wrestlers like a Daniel Bryan would look back and even trained with the Shawn Michaels, and how modern wrestlers look back fondly on an Eddie Guerrero, on those smaller wrestlers like a Rey Mysterio. We're getting to a point where this generation is looking at someone like a Daniel Bryan as a game changer, as someone that they could see towards and see like, that guy did it. Yes, certain things had to click into place, and the universe had to align, but he did it. He was at the top of the card, and he got the greatest organic crowd reaction in the lead up to WrestleMania 30. But before I talk about WrestleMania 30 and the rise of a Daniel Bryan, I want to circle back. In the past, I've brought promos that include Daniel Bryan, that PWG promo. If listeners have listened, go back a couple episodes, and you see these instances of the brilliance of who Daniel Bryan is, that regardless of what's given to him, he makes something of it, right? When he's truly given an opportunity. And if you go back a year before at WrestleMania 29, you got to remember he was already successful with Kane, of all people, going back to this and going back to these reinventions that Kane would have. We talk about this version of Kane that is very, ominous, and the serial killer Kane. And then he became Team Hell No, and silly vignettes, and you bought it. Here's the big monster, and here's the silly Daniel Bryan, and perfect, Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger, twins vibes almost. And they defended the tag titles at WrestleMania 29, beat Ziggler, beat Langston, a Big E at the time. But you got to remember, the next night at Raw, there's this very formative moment where the Shield descends on Undertaker alone in the ring. And they're about to jump the Undertaker, right? The modern Shield, who now they've all made it on their own. They're all big stars, right? And who comes to rescue them? Kane and Daniel Bryan. And it is the biggest crowd reaction because here you have essentially the future of wrestling for the next several years, whether we knew it or not, right? Kane obviously was on kind of the end, the retiring end, and Undertaker. But for Undertaker and Kane to sit in the same ring with Daniel Bryan facing the future of the business, essentially, in the Shield at the time, is very telling of what happened next year, right? Because then you have the next year, and we have parallels to this year, because what happens this year? Punk gets hurt, and that sets in motion a lot of things. And it is exactly the same way, because it is around the same time of year in 2014 when Punk decides to walk out on WWE, for all the reasons that we can go back and do that retrospective, and opens a pocket to the undeniability that became the Yes Movement and Daniel Bryan. So what I'm going to show you is actually two clips. One is from January 2014, January 27th, and the other one is the addendum to March 10th, 2014. Now we go back to that, what was going on, this idea of Occupy, and the McMahons are very good at taking some real life happenings and kind of putting them into the storyline. So the first clip I'll show you is the storyline is the authority at the time, right? Which was Stephanie. It was Triple H for all intents and purposes, and they're not paying attention to the audience, as it were. And we'll pick it up with Stephanie here. Oh. And here.
Let me answer your question with another question. Did you people come here to see Randy Orton? Did you people come here to see Triple H? Listen, people can come and they can watch whoever they want. That's one of the great things about the WWE. They get to pick their favorite superstars. But listen to these people. I'm not here to come out and complain about last night because what's happened has happened. But you just said at the Elimination Chamber, in the Elimination Chamber match, the WWE World Heavyweight Championship is going to be on the line. I want in that match. I want that match. They want that match. And quite frankly, Stephanie, if you want to step aside, Hunter, I don't think either of us should leave this ring until I get what I want.
All right. I'll pause it there. So we have a closing there with Triple H standing side to side. And then we fast forward to March and we have the answer. We have Triple H's actual response.
And I do own you! I do own you! Get out! I said get out! Get out! Get out!
Don't you hear, Stephanie? They're saying no! They are saying no! We are not leaving until we get what we want! And Hunter, you know exactly what we want. A match between you and me at WrestleMania 30.
This has got to be so embarrassing for Stephanie and Hunter. It's embarrassing for Daniel Bryan.
Go ahead, Hunter. Give us what we want, and we'll give you your show back. It's as simple as that. You guys like to lay out ultimatums. I'm laying out an ultimatum too. You don't get your show back until we get what we want.
You want to know what the truth is, Daniel? Truth is, I actually like you. I actually saw something in you. So you know what? I took it upon myself to try to protect you. To protect you from everything that would happen when you were successful. You would be run out of here. So I tried to protect you. I protected you in SummerSlam. I protected you ever since then. And what happens? This happens. You want to know why I didn't fight you at WrestleMania? For your own good, Daniel. Because I will end all of this. Because at WrestleMania, I will not stop until I end you. That's the way I operate. And that's the way it's going to be. You want to fight me at WrestleMania?
Oh, boy.
Then be careful what you wish for. You're on.
Oh, man! It's going to happen! Daniel Bryan got what he wanted!
Now, shut up and get the hell out of my ring.
Daniel Bryan pushed Triple H.
Wait. Hunter. I'm sorry, I didn't, I misspoke earlier. That's not exactly all that I want. You see, because as much as these people want to see me fight you at WrestleMania, what they really want is to see me fighting for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
And what strikes me the most about this is how long, I guess watching it back then, we don't realize how long they actually drew this out, right?
Definitely.
when we have January, we know there's the machinations of like, okay, we gotta shift gears, we gotta, you know, change course here, but they're not fully in. I don't think it happened right away. Where like it's not until then, until mid-March, where they're like, okay, like this is the plan, and then you have the background of even Batista coming back and doing the Bautista and the whole thing, right? And even he internally behind the scenes being against him going over and him saying like, this is the guy, you got to embrace the guy right now. He's the hot product. But thinking back, 10 years ago doesn't seem like it. For me, it feels like yesterday. But how did you experience it? And I'll start with Adrian over here.
That was a great moment, man. It was a great moment in pro wrestling because, like you said, that team Hell No, and is something funny about how comedy opens up these characters, opens up these possibilities where we enjoy them that much more, and we get to the point where we want to see more of these characters. And that's what Team Hell No did for Daniel Bryan. It made him that much more of an enduring character. I remember, even I want to say, was that even before Team Hell No, when he was in his relationship with AJ Lee? Like, it was, he was the jerk, he was the heel, but toward the end of that, he was kind of like the butt of jokes. So it started that shift of him being a funny character. I remember The Rock pretty much embarrassing him during that same time period.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it makes the guy more vulnerable, and we like that. And it was just such a weird, that was such a weird year in wrestling. Like you said, Punk left, he took his ball and went home. And a lot of us, myself being one of the big CM Punk fans at the time, I was like, man, what the hell are they gonna do? Even though Daniel Bryan's right in front of our face, having great matches, challenging himself with different character and all of this stuff, while we didn't know what we ultimately wanted until it caught on fire. And what really put it over was when he beat Cena and then Triple H screwed him over. Like, that just made everyone get even more fired up. So that whole run, or that whole storyline, the yes movement and all that stuff, it it was a fun time to be a wrestling fan. And that was during a time where wrestling wasn't that hot. It had its moments, it had its cool things going on, but we weren't really, really locked in until that yes movement turned things up. And that was an awesome WrestleMania, and I'm so glad that I was able to experience that. Greg, I know you went, so what were your thoughts, man?
So going back to what you just said about him being with AJ Lee, if you remember, he was world champion. Well, he was champion,
Mm-hmm.
faced Sheamus,
Mm-hmm.
and Sheamus beat him in like no time after the kiss. People were pissed. And I believe that was in Miami.
Yes,
It was
29.
And that's when the yes movement started.
Yeah.
Because I remember him coming out and people chanting yes throughout that entire stadium. Nothing like it became, but it
Mm-hmm.
was like at that moment, it was like, oh, this dude's starting to get over.
Right.
And then he got beat like that, and everybody's like, what just happened? Like, are you kidding? And it was just like crazy, to think about. Fast forward to this year that you're speaking about here, and I always felt like this was a Vince issue.
Definitely.
People were very happy to see Batista. Everybody, if you remember, he came out, people pop.
Yeah.
But and same thing with Goldberg came back and others, but we don't always want to see these guys in the title picture. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the thing. I think, Adrian, you and I used to talk about this, that I didn't mind Brock, but put him over here in his own little universe. Like,
Right.
have Goldberg over here, have Batista over here, have their own little thing going on. It doesn't have to be part of the title picture. I think that's why people rebelled against Batista. I never felt like it was against Batista.
Right.
Same thing this year. People rebelled against Rock because you put him into you affected the title picture. And I think that's where Vince had those issues back then. It was just like, dude, read the audience. Just we want to see these people, but not in our main universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then all the steam happened with Daniel, and I mean that place went crazy. I mean, in New Orleans, they went crazy, and we were
Mm-hmm.
ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
The promos, like you just said, I forgot that it took that long to set that match up because then he had to win a match and then win another match, if you
Yeah,
remember.
they put him. They gave him all kinds of hell.
The
And
gamut for sure.
the pop at the end when he won was crazy. I'm going to throw something else at you guys. As much as people wanted it, they wanted it more after being so disappointed that the streak ended earlier.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
So the streak ending.
I wasn't
No,
disappointed.
but I'm saying, I know you weren't. But with the streak ending, people were like, they needed it.
Gobsmacked.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
a group of fans, we
Mm-hmm.
needed it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like I've never experienced that before. That was crazy.
That
But
sucked the
then
air
to
out of
see
that building.
Daniel, oh my gosh! But to see Daniel
Yeah.
Bryan when he won and the pop and how happy people were, not just in the stadium but outside the stadium, walking back to our hotel
Mm-hmm.
on Bourbon Street, people were just chanting everywhere.
Right.
And to me, that day was very surreal because that first segment was unbelievable with Hogan, Rock,
Mm-hmm.
Austin, closing it out with Bryan, the Yes Movement, and the WWE Network launching at the same time.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
That was the
That's
big event.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still recall that weekend being the one where I watched it with friends, and I recall like sadly the network kind of led to us not hanging out as much because we didn't have to get together for pay-per-views anymore. So it's kind of it's a bittersweet memory because we got together, we were all like literally jaws on the floor. It's not a when Taker lost, but that feel good moment just left you with that. Oh man,
Yeah.
like next time I felt that was when Sammy and KO won the tag titles at the last Mania, and the stadium
Yeah.
is doing literally singing Sammy's song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the promos you brought were cool because there were such real moments throughout that. And to WWE's credit, they made the shift. They did what they had to do.
Yeah.
You brought up, to Batista's credit, he's like, no, we need to go with that one. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Batista tap out?
Yes. He was the one to tap. Yep.
Yeah.
He
So I
did
mean,
business.
that tells you something too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just so many things. I mean, I kind of reminiscing going through this. It's not just that promo. There's another promo that goes along with this, with Connor, the kid who had
Oh
cancer.
yeah.
And so when you're playing those things, I think about that, and I think about the images that you had with Connor getting in the ring, and even pinning Triple H, and these different things, and how much he loved Daniel Bryan, and Daniel coming out after that and celebrating with Connor. It's just kind of like so many things, that lead up to that. So when I see that promo, it didn't just talk us into the building now. Then it talks us back into the building in our minds and takes us back into all these little situations of, like I said, the Rock, Hogan, and Austin. It takes us back to the streak ending. It takes us back to Batista tapping. It takes us back to Connor. It takes us back to the Yes movement throughout outside, like I said, outside on Bourbon Street, and people just in the middle of the just randomly, yes, yes, yes. It takes me back to seeing Sami Zayn at Cafe Du Monde. So before nobody knew who he was, and
Nice.
he was in
Wow, no
NXT, but
way.
he was in NXT, but NXT wasn't what it became, and I was like, that's Sami Zayn.
Big
It was
deal.
just weird, like he's just walking around like nobody, and just little stuff like that just kind of starts jogging that memory. So yeah, thank you for bringing that because it just kind of talked me back into all of that.
Definitely.
It kind of talks me back into wanting to watch it, like almost back into that building,
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I can create a direct through line to my life personally, like to my wife even liking wrestling because Daniel Bryan ends up marrying the Bellas when Brie Bella does Total Bellas, and that's actually one of the shows that got her into back into wrestling because she was like a taker girl growing up, and then so oh, that Daniel Bryan, oh, he's a cute guy, blah blah blah, and then got to see that whole other side of him, and it's oh well, let me tell you, it's I'm a wrestling fan.
But
and she didn't run away, guys. She didn't run away.
and even going back to that whole yes movement, and I know we talk about the promos, right? We talk about all this stuff. As great as he was in the ring, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't stand Daniel Bryan. I hated him. Couldn't stand him. I started liking him leading up to Miami. When he started the personality started to come out, and you started to see the yes stuff, and then the Team Hell No stuff was hilarious. And by this time, I was like, I like Daniel Bryan, but I like the character, and that's where I think it comes back to when did he become this icon, if you will, this person that is when he let that personality out, and that's where I think we always go back to. It's not about the in ring. It's just not. It's fun to watch. Don't get it twisted, right? We like our 5-star matches and 6 stars in Japan or whatever, but it's not. That's not how why we get into the building. We didn't come into the building for that. We came into the building because of the character and because of these promos, because of what they do, and that's what sucked me into liking Daniel Bryan. And it was just like I'll be the first one to tell you I couldn't stand him. I couldn't stand him. And I was like, oh, he's so freaking boring. He's got nothing. Yeah, he's great in the ring. Okay, that's fun. But everything else, I didn't like. When this stuff came out, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
I laughed when Taker lost, by the way. I laughed and I was cheering and I was marking out because everyone knows that I'm a big Brock Lesnar mark as well. So I enjoyed myself. I loved it. Yeah, I know. But speaking of which, I don't want to be too negative about this, but since we are bringing up somebody like Brock, and we've been talking about WrestleMania the past 2 episodes, we gotta shortly acknowledge the fact that the guy who created WrestleMania, they're not going to be talking about that guy. They're not going to be talking about Vince McMahon. And we're not going to go into details because we would like to be monetized and all of that good stuff. But I look at both of you guys as wrestling fans that are very rational, educated. Like I can talk to you guys about situations like this. What are your thoughts, Adelie, when it comes to moving forward this creation, this thing that Vince McMahon, let's go ahead and say it. If it wasn't for Vince McMahon, pro wrestling wouldn't be at this level or this connection with globally as it is. Like, what are your thoughts that moving forward, they're not going to mention him? And
no,
I mean, I'll say rightfully so.
Nor should they.
Right.
Nor should they. And maybe down the line, who knows what's going to happen? Obviously, we can't tell what the future holds. And
right.
Again, without getting into it, there is no. For me, there is no. Oh, I'm gonna try to find the good. It is what it is, right? He made his bed. That's gonna have its place. It's part of history. There's no going back. And I always hear the wrestlers that are in WWE when they're asked about it now, and they just say it almost like like a death in the family. Like, I can't believe that happened, because this is what you love. This is your passion. And for better or worse, it's kind of like any scandal that happened in other sports where like it's bigger. It has to be bigger than even the man that created it, right? So many historical figures, so many other transformative figures that created a brand or created, a movie, or whatever, or go the Harvey Weinstein route. Uh, the art is the art, and for me, pro wrestling is art, right? And WrestleMania epitomizes what this business, this art form, this sport can be, right? And back to Greg's point, saying like, if I want to watch a very technical 5-star match, I'll go to New Japan. I'll watch a Wrestle Kingdom, this very elaborate 1-hour match in the modern sense, which can happen in WWE. It can happen on the American side. But if I want the spectacle, I can separate that from what Vince is, right? He has this place. He will forever have this place because we can't ignore history, right? Only fools ignore history. But by that same token is I can't not elevate what this art form is, because there are men and women and just human beings who put their life on the line to give us this entertainment, and that's not going to stop it. And ultimately, that's what I look at it as. It's for me, it's entertainment, it's an escape, and you can't deny what happened, but you can move forward by acknowledging. I think what broke my heart the most was Mick, because if you know Mick's background on the side and how much he dedicated to Rain, look up that organization. I've donated in the past, and how near and dear to his heart all that pieces of supporting women that have been through abusive situations. And he has to coalesce that. He has to bridge that with a man that essentially gave him his career, that essentially put food on his table, that he's still collecting royalties on. And I think someone as level headed as a Mick Foley can still say that is who this man is, but he doesn't represent what the future of wrestling, because I will say it is the future of wrestling, right? If you are anyone worth your salt coming into the business, if you're not looking at the biggest company with the biggest money, with the biggest show, you're not doing it right.
Greg, what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting situation, right? I think the issue is it's pro wrestling, and we have so many blurred lines that it's harder to separate sometimes. Um, Here's how I look at it. I'm gonna use an analogy. I can sit down and watch the Cosby Show because that's Dr. Huxtable. That's not Bill Cosby. I can enjoy that. I can enjoy that whole thing. I can enjoy the lessons that were learned. I can enjoy the family atmosphere of what the Cosby Show was and how that changed sitcoms. Without the Cosby Show, we may not have sitcoms today. They were dead. I can separate that. I can understand that Bill Cosby did a lot of stuff that I don't agree with, right? I can put that over here in a category because that's the actor, that's not the character that he played. Because there's a lot of people who play POSs of the character,
right?
That we hate the character, but we don't hate the actor. And I know you may be like, well, that's fake. It is, but there's that separation to me. Like when I look at that, and that's what I have to do here. I have to understand that. Look, I don't agree with what the allegations are.
Right.
Everything hasn't come out yet. We don't know everything, right? But what I've read, I don't agree, right? It's over here. But I can't deny what the dude has created.
Right.
And what he's done. He didn't just change wrestling. He changed entertainment. He changed the NFL. He changed NBA. If you don't think they have, look at the packages they do. Look at the music they come out to now. They didn't used to do all that stuff. He changed all of that. It's so much of a bigger spectacle now because of wrestling, and I would argue that to the day that I die.
Yeah.
So I have to be able to separate that, and I can't sit back and go. Now, does that mean I can go back and watch some of this old Attitude Era stuff and separate it and be like, oh, that's kind of him? But
Yikes.
Why? At the end of the day, how can we really be shocked? We always said that it was an extension of their characters, but I have to separate those. But
Yeah.
the problem again has always been that blurred line
Mhm.
of what's a character and what's real. There's
Yeah.
no other actor in the world that goes on Club Shay Shay or Impulsive or whatever, and hey, I'm Roman Reigns. No, you're Joe Anoa'i. Anoa'i.
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
he doesn't go out there as Joe. He goes out there as Roman.
Right.
You don't see Ben Affleck going out as Bruce Wayne.
Right.
He goes out as Ben Affleck. So that's the problem with the pro wrestling industry, that we don't have that separation. But that's
Mhm.
how I have to separate it. McMahon here, WWE, and what has been created here.
I
That's a
feel
great
that.
point.
It's
It's a
a
great
really
point.
nuanced. It's a really nuanced discussion, man. Because
Hmm
you get a full range of commentary when it
Yeah.
comes to Vince McMahon overall. Like you have this sector of fans that will champion everything Vince McMahon has done because thanks to him they were introduced to professional wrestling.
hmm
And a lot of them, that's what they stick on. But then you have
Right.
another end of wrestling fans that, especially, I mean, it's so many other instances of Vince doing something that a human shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
that that's what their sole focus or perception of Vince McMahon. And there you have a lot of us in the middle where, like you said, hey, thanks to Vince McMahon and his genius and all of that, pro wrestling is at a level that it's never been before. And we got to acknowledge that. But also, we got to acknowledge it's been so many people victimized
hmm
and disrespected and exploited, frankly, by Vince McMahon and a lot of things that he's done. So it's just one of those things, man, where it comes to, as a wrestling fan, it's so many different perspectives and it's such a nuanced discussion that we could spend a whole nother hour talking about this.
Yeah.
And and everyone's not going to agree with each other about their perception of that man. And it's just, for me, I'm not saying it's heartbreaking that WWE may never mention Vince McMahon. I'm saying it's heartbreaking that it even got to this point,
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
he's created this thing. He is such an innovative idea. The thought and concept of WrestleMania literally changed the industry forever.
Yeah.
But we can't talk about it now. And it
Right.
sucks. It sucks that we can't give flowers to someone because of their transgressions and the things that
And
they've done.
in some ways it was almost like by design that he essentially initiated his own downfall,
Yeah.
because what's the reason why all this is out there is because first it became publicly traded and now it got bought out, right? And it wasn't like this is new. He stepped down once, right? And he was brought back into the fold for all the same reasons. Obviously, not all the details, the allegations were out there. So it's this very hard thing, especially lately, to explain to folks that even have a passing interest, that know that I'm a wrestling fan in particular, because we always talk about this, and Greg's point is like, we're like pariahs, right? Like, oh, why do you like that? And I always hated the word pro wrestling to a point because it seems like a misnomer. It's
Mm,
not. It doesn't really get at the heart with what this is that we like,
mm,
because of the blurred lines, because the backstage is sometimes even more interesting than the product that's out there, and that keeps you kind of involved and curious about what's happened next. But when you have something so true to life and willfully done, right? We've had tragedies in the past. We have so many pro wrestlers that sadly have died young, but that almost seems to be like, okay, that's sadly almost acceptable because that's
Yeah.
their choices that have been made. But here you have someone that had control over
mm,
everything,
Yeah.
and that's hard to reconcile, at least for me.
mm.
And it's something that I'm still struggling where I'm like, I'm supporting a product that, they haven't had. He still owns half the company, right?
Well, keep this in mind. They didn't bring him back. He forced himself back.
Exactly, which is worse in a way. Yeah.
Correct. And we talk about he changed the game on a lot of things. Don't be surprised if he didn't just change the game on corporate law. He had set himself up with what they call super shares, where they were like double, and he
Yeah.
could never be taken out of power.
Right.
Don't be surprised if corporate law doesn't change because of what he was doing behind the scenes. What gives me some faith, to be honest, is the takeover. Is the fact that
Yeah.
he came back. Stephanie said, "I'm out of here."
Yeah, she bought
Yeah.
as soon
Wow.
as
He came back and they moved him out. Let's don't get that lost on anybody. They moved him out. He tried to force himself
immediately.
back in, and they were like, no. Triple H is taking this over. You're gonna basically. He was getting moved out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still own this, but he didn't own 51%. He had a boss, and they could do whatever they wanted to at that point.
Yeah.
So that gives me faith in TKO that look, we're gonna run this the right way, and we're gonna do this, and we know what he is. I don't know that they knew that much, but they have that. But here's the other thing, guys. I don't want to. I have a hard time with wrestling in a way. You don't want to know the history of wrestling. You don't want to know what happened in the past. You don't want to know all the stuff Ric Flair did. You don't want to know all the stuff Ricky Morton did, the Rock and Roll Express, and all these guys who are over in these territories and the parties. And I don't want to know everything because we might be shocked. And I don't mean to sit back and go and make it like, oh, we should know. No, we don't. Sometimes it's just best not to know. We know that it's changed. We know that the environment has changed. If you listen to Jericho, he talks about nobody drinks anymore. They play video games, they hang out, they do these other things. It's a very different environment across the board, not just WWE, Impact, and New Japan's probably different, and I'm sure AEW is very different. They're all just different generations, right? One of the things they've always cautioned you about: don't meet your heroes.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we hear certain things that have happened with certain people, and I don't listen to what the press says. I listen to what other wrestlers say.
Definitely.
I can't harp on, and I don't want to get into specifics, but like this person's this way. That's what you say, and yeah, he said some bad things. But when I hear it from all these other wrestlers and they dispute it, I've got to side over here. My first favorite wrestler was Junkyard Dog. I love Junkyard Dog. I find out later on he's a cokehead. I mean, all these different things and all that, and I'm like, but I have to reconcile the fact that I didn't connect with him because of that. I connected with him because of what he did in front of me, and that's why one of the things now when people ask me recently, who are your favorites of all time? There's two. When I say all time, Hogan and Michael Hayes. People are like Michael Hayes. I'm like, I connected with them, but you know what I love the most about Michael Hayes? I haven't found out anything about him that I didn't already know.
That's true.
The dude was a free bird. There's pictures of him on Pro Wrestling Illustrated. You want to think about images. There's a picture of him and Kerry Von Erich on a Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Michael Hayes has a bottle of Jack in his hand, and Kerry Von Erich has a glass of milk. Kerry Von Erich, I promise you, was not drinking milk, but Michael Hayes was drinking Jack. And he never hid what he was.
Yeah.
And it's like, man. And I've always loved Michael Hayes. So it's just like I always connected with the Freebirds. Well, not always, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But there was a time where I hated him. But you see, last week in our last episode, I had on Bad Street USA. But it's like, be careful what we find out. And I think Vince is the last of that grouping of promoters that was old school, had an old school mentality of that 80s rock and roll lifestyle, but kept it. Whereas everybody else changed.
Mm.
And I think he got to the point where he was just like still living that life, stuck in that era.
It's wild.
And but it's disappointing. But what I take solace in is that TKO owns it now. I think it's being run well. I think it's been run well for the last couple of years. I think one of my biggest things is you see that Stephanie was, oh, Dad, you're still here. I'm out. Okay, Dad, you stepped out. Let me step in and help out. Oh, you're back. I'm out. Which tells me right there, she's like, And I think 100% Triple H is the same way because that's why he got moved out of NXT. Because you think about it, they were power playing him out.
Super key point.
Yeah.
So
well, I didn't want to bring it down, the mood down, but I mean, we're transparent. We gotta.
It's the elephant in the room.
This is something we gotta talk about, man.
Yeah.
Past 2 episodes we've been talking about WrestleMania. It's our favorite time of the year, but we gotta acknowledge the person who created it is now going to be essentially erased from most wrestlers' history. That's huge.
That's true, but let's take solace in the fact that, man, he created it, but man, how many people have taken it to the next level?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about how many people, and let's be honest. Let's go back. I'll argue he didn't create it. I'll argue Dusty created it. Because without Starrcade, you don't have Mania. And I will argue that forever too. Starrcade started in '83. Mania started in '85. Starrcade was the first true supercard. Yes, I've listened to Bruce Pritchard and others say, "Oh, they all have supercards." They did, but nobody had what Starrcade was, and the big buildup and how long it took, and even if you go back to I think '83, '84, they even had Pyro, so they started it. Vince took it to the next level, and then his team took it beyond. And I think that's what we have to look at is that there is a huge team of people that have blown this thing up to a new level. Whether it's Triple H helping out, whether it's Shawn and Diesel at one point, whether it's Kevin Dunn, Bruce Pritchard, Jim Ross, all these guys behind the scenes have taken that to a new level. And I think that's the other thing I celebrate. He may have started it, but he didn't perfect it.
Well said. Well said.
So, with all of that, we got one more promo to go. We have our non-wrestling related promo. And now, with that conversation, which we didn't know was going to happen, I'm even more excited about this promo I brought. Because it's about going to the next thing. Because what we've watched with Mania, you look at one, if you go back and look at it, and you're like, man, you had stars. You had Cyndi Lauper. You had Muhammad Ali. You had Liberace. You had all these people in there, right? Mr. T. You go to number 2, you had it in 3 locations, which to me is crazy. You had a battle royal that had all these NFL players in it, whether it was Bill Fralick or William the Refrigerator Perry. You had Mr. T again in that one. You had other stars. Throughout the years, it's gotten bigger, bigger, bigger. And, you've seen it kind of go ebb and flow a couple of times. You saw WrestleMania 3, 93,173. Don't ask me why I know that, but I do. So in the Silverdome with that iconic slam. I mean, if you really think about it, we talked about number 1, but number 3 is really the WrestleMania.
Definitely.
And then you move on, start seeing them get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they have to scale back and then bigger and bigger. And it's like, how can we get next? Right? And so that's what this promo that I'm about to share with you is. It's about being better and being next.
You can do more. I believe there's more in you. Like a ketchup packet when you squeeze it out. My auntie, she get everything out of that. She squeezed that thing. You open it up, you didn't even know ketchup was ever in there. I'm saying to you, I believe there's more in you. Coach said jump. Some of y'all were like this. Some of y'all could do this. You could have did more, but it takes too much effort to do more. I want to challenge you to choose the difficult right over the easy wrong.
That's amazing, man. That's well said.
I mean, you think about it. Are we squeezing the most out of what we can do? And I think when I look at Mania, I think about every year they take that catch-up packet. They figure out how we go get a little bit more out. And it's like we should challenge ourselves the same way. We should look at ourselves as like he just said. How do we do more? Are we doing everything we can do, right? And to me, looking at Mania, it's an evolution of what I should be doing. It's an evolution of, man, how do I make it bigger, better, better? How do I go to that next level? And so when I saw that promo, I was like, man, that's just perfect for Mania. And it's kind of like what we are just talking about. Like, how do we do better?
Live the words to live by, right? Never plateau, never stay in one spot. And I think as I don't know, just taking it personally, I think, through college and through, getting more education and moving up in positions, I think there's a point when you can rest on your laurels and say like, okay, I'm here. I'm here at whatever vision I had for me. And, there's always ways to challenge yourself on that, whether it means relationship based, health based, spiritually, however that may be and however that might fit, especially to the listening audience, however you perceive that to be, why not be better? Why not, position yourself in a way that it's not something you're going to announce to the world. We live in a very social media driven world where we're updating people almost, by the minute at times. Some things don't have to be broadcast. Some things are very personal, are very, sacred in a way. And you live them and you monitor your progress because you do it for yourself.
Definitely, man. Definitely. I mean, I take that guy's what's his name, by the way, Greg? I didn't
Willie
get it.
Spears.
Gotcha.
He's awesome. I mean, if you ever follow him on TikTok or on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, he's always posting up little videos. They're inspirational, humorous. He's got a lot of stuff. He talks to teachers and things, and that one just stuck out to me, man. It's like I believe you can do more, and I'm like, we can. And I just want to kind of inspire, hopefully, share that with you guys and inspire y'all a little bit, and inspire our audience a little bit.
Definitely, man. It just kind of reminds me of things coaches would tell you. I play football and all that stuff, and one thing a coach would always tell you is, man, tomorrow's not guaranteed, bro. So, you don't want to leave. The saying is leave everything on the field and all of that stuff. But is what does that truly mean? Does that the next day after the game, you don't want to leave that sliver of, man, I wish I would have done this much more. This could have been the difference of a win or a loss. This could have been the difference of me scoring a touchdown or me not scoring. It's one of those, man, why? Why did I hold back? Why didn't I go all in like they wanted me to? And it's that feeling, and you can apply that to life. Like everyone says, live it up, because it's not guaranteed tomorrow. Don't leave the next day wondering, damn, what if I actually did my full potential or push myself or challenge myself? What could I have accomplished? Who could I have made happy?
Right.
And it's just one of those things where we can all probably find a moment or locate a moment in time of our life where we're like, damn, man, what if? And that kind of stuff just eats away at a lot of us.
Oh yeah, for sure. This was a great episode, guys. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
Great talk. Great conversation.
And I think, like you just said, being able to do more. I think it's important for us. Like, this is our Mania season, right? We talked about Mania last week. We talked about Mania this week. The big event, right? And I think that's something we can try to do every day. How can we be more to somebody every day, right? Be more to anybody. just a smile, just whatever, is because Mania puts a smile on our faces. We talked about it. We talked about, reliving the Daniel Bryan moment and all the things that came with that. Reliving, WrestleMania 10, man, just being so excited for, Razor and getting to meet him and all those things. Those things put a smile on my face. And it's like, now my challenge got to be take that joy that I got out of Mania and see if I can give it to somebody else. And I think that's how can we do more. So
that's a good challenge,
awesome.
man. That's a good challenge.
So thank you guys for sharing your memories today. Hopefully everybody out there listening is like, oh man, this was a fun episode. Definitely let us know in the comments or hit us up on Twitter, and let us know what else you want to hear. And if you like this one, if you didn't like it, let us know that too. Hey, but hopefully, and if you guys get out there and do a little bit more, let us know about that too. Let us know how you made somebody else smile. But
Definitely, man.
thank you guys for tonight, for today, and sharing your Mania memories. And we definitely got some more stuff to come up, man. A lot of things coming up here on Talk 'em into the building.
Yes, sir. Y'all enjoy WrestleMania, man. Finish the story, Cody. Finish it.
Yes.
Yes.